One cold evening, a struggling single mother, Alina Roswell, made a small but heartfelt decision to buy a warm meal for a homeless man named Victor. She never imagined that this one act of kindness would set off a chain of events leading to a life-altering revelation. As their paths continued to cross in the most unexpected ways, buried secrets began to surface, connecting their lives in ways neither could have ever foreseen. What started as an ordinary gesture soon unraveled a mystery that would change their destinies forever. Before we jump into this incredible story, drop a comment, let us know where you're watching from. And if you enjoy this video, be sure to subscribe for more. The icy wind cut through the city streets as Alina Roswell wrapped her coat tightly around her. The weight of unpaid bills and endless responsibilities bore down on her shoulders, but tonight, something else caught her eye. Sitting on the curb near the cafe where she worked, a homeless man shivered under a tattered blanket. His gaunt face and hollow eyes struck a chord in her heart. Without hesitation, she stepped inside, used her last few dollars, and bought him a hot meal. As she handed it to him, he looked up, eyes filled with disbelief and gratitude. Victor's hands trembled as he took the food, his throat dry from hours without speaking. He managed a weak smile, nodding in thanks. Alina expected him to devour the meal, but instead, he carefully unwrapped it, savoring each bite as if it were a treasure. Something about him intrigued her. He wasn't like the other homeless people she had seen before. He carried an air of quiet dignity, a presence that hinted at a story untold. As she walked away, she couldn't shake the feeling that this man was more than he seemed. That night, as Alina lay awake, thoughts of Victor haunted her. There was something eerily familiar about his face, though she couldn't place it. She recalled the sadness in his eyes, the way he had held the food with almost reverence. She had spent years trying to make ends meet, raising her son, Caleb, alone. Life had been unforgiving, and yet, that man's suffering seemed far greater. The next day, she found herself drawn back to the same spot, searching for him, only to find that he was gone, leaving behind nothing but footprints in the snow. A week passed before Alina saw him again, this time hunched over, clutching something in his hand. As she approached, she noticed it was a crumpled, yellowed letter. He flinched when she spoke his name, startled that she had remembered. "Who are you, Victor?" she asked gently. He hesitated before whispering, "A man lost in time." His words sent a chill down her spine. He held out the letter, and as she read, her heart pounded. It was a letter written decades ago, from a father to his unborn child. And that father's name? Victor Roswell. Alina's hands shook as she reread the name on the letter. Roswell. Her last name. It was impossible, just a coincidence. But as she met Victor's sorrowful gaze, doubt crept in. "Where did you get this?" she asked. His voice was barely a whisper. "It was meant for someone I lost long ago." Her mind reeled. Could it be? Was this broken man connected to her past? The idea was absurd. Yet, deep down, something told her that fate had brought them together for a reason. She needed to know the truth, no matter how painful. Alina spent the next few days searching for answers. She dug through old documents, birth records, anything that could prove, or disprove, the unthinkable. Her mother had died years ago, taking many secrets with her. All she knew was that her father had left before she was born. But when she finally found a tattered photograph buried among old belongings, her breath caught. The man in the picture was younger, healthier, but undeniably Victor. Her pulse quickened. Could the man she had helped, the man she had pitied, be the very father she had spent her life resenting? The next evening, Alina found Victor in the same place. She handed him the photograph with trembling fingers. His reaction was immediate. His eyes welled with tears as he traced the edges of the image. "Where did you get this?" His voice cracked. Alina swallowed hard. "My mother's things. That's you, isn't it?" He nodded, a single tear slipping down his weathered face. "I never stopped looking for you," he whispered. The words shattered something inside her. For years, she had believed her father had abandoned her. But what if the truth was far more complicated? Victor took a deep breath before beginning. "I was a young man, reckless and scared. When your mother told me she was pregnant, I panicked. I wasn't ready. But then I realized I wanted to be there. I wanted to raise you." His voice broke. "But when I came back, she was gone. No trace of where she had gone or how to find you." Alina's heart clenched. Had her mother kept her father away? Had she lived her entire life believing a lie? She needed answers. But more than that, she needed time to forgive. Alina struggled with conflicting emotions. Could she trust Victor's words? Could she let go of the pain she had held for so long? She saw the regret in his eyes, the years of suffering etched into his skin. Maybe he had made mistakes, but hadn't they all? Slowly, she made a decision. "Come with me," she said. He hesitated. "Why?" "Because Caleb deserves to know his grandfather," she replied. A choked sob escaped Victor's lips. A second chance, one he never thought he'd get. And as they walked away together, the cold didn't seem so harsh anymore. Alina led Victor to her small apartment, her mind racing with emotions. Caleb was inside, doing his homework at the kitchen table. "Mom, you're home," he called out. Then his eyes landed on Victor, and curiosity flickered across his face. "Who's that?" Alina hesitated. How could she explain? "This is Victor, an old friend." Victor smiled nervously, unsure of how to act. Caleb studied him for a moment before shrugging. "You look like you could use some hot chocolate." The innocent offer caught Victor off guard. He blinked rapidly, his throat tight. "I'd like that very much, son." Victor sipped the warm drink Caleb had made, his hands trembling slightly. The kindness in this boy's heart reminded him of Alina when she was young. If only he had been there to see it himself. "How do you know my mom?" Caleb asked between sips. Alina shot Victor a look, silently warning him not to reveal too much. "We knew each other a long time ago," Victor answered carefully. The conversation drifted to harmless topics, but an unspoken tension lingered. Victor felt something he hadn't in decades, hope. Maybe, just maybe, he could make up for lost time. That night, after Caleb went to bed, Alina sat across from Victor at the kitchen table. The dim light cast shadows across his weathered face. "I need to know the truth," she said. "Did my mother keep me from you?" Victor exhaled heavily, rubbing his face. "I don't know. I tried to find her, but every time I got close, it was like she vanished. I thought she didn't want me near. But if that was true, why did she keep the letter?" Alina's chest tightened. If her mother had truly wanted Victor gone, why had she held on to his words? Alina couldn't sleep. She needed answers. She rummaged through the old box of her mother's belongings, searching for anything she might have overlooked. Then she found it, an old journal tucked between faded receipts and medical papers. As she flipped through the pages, her breath hitched. In a shaky script, her mother had written, "I still see him in her eyes. But I can't risk it. He'll never forgive me." Alina's hands shook. What had her mother meant? What secret had been kept hidden all these years? She wasn't sure she wanted to know, but she had to. Alina spent hours piecing together the fragments of her mother's journal. The words painted a painful picture. Her mother had been terrified, not of Victor, but of something else. He deserved to know. But if he ever found out, he'd never forgive me. Alina's stomach twisted. Had her mother done something unforgivable? Had she kept them apart for a reason? The next morning, she confronted Victor. "Did you ever hurt my mother?" His eyes widened in shock. "Never," he whispered. "I loved her." His voice was thick with emotion. "I would have done anything for her. But something scared her." Alina read deeper into the journal, her heart pounding. Then she found a single name underlined twice in her mother's desperate scrawl. Harlan Greaves. The name meant nothing to her, but Victor went pale. His hand gripped the edge of the table as if the ground beneath him had disappeared. "No," he breathed. Alina's stomach dropped. "Who is he?" Victor looked at her with haunted eyes. "He was the man who ruined my life." A silence heavier than stone settled between them. Alina's mother had feared this man. But why? And how was he connected to Victor's past? Victor's hands trembled as he spoke. "Harlan Greaves was my employer. A powerful man. Corrupt. Dangerous. I found out things I wasn't supposed to know." He swallowed hard. "When I tried to leave, he made sure I lost everything. My job, my home, even my reputation. I was branded a criminal for something I never did." Alina's head spun. "And my mother?" Victor exhaled sharply. She must have known. Maybe she thought he'd come after her, too. Alina's heart ached. Had her mother spent her life running from a ghost? And if Greaves had destroyed Victor, was he still out there? Alina searched online for Harlan Greaves, her fingers shaking. When the results loaded, her blood ran cold. He wasn't just alive, he was thriving. A wealthy businessman, an untouchable figure. A man with power. And then she saw it, an article about his latest real estate acquisition. The address was just a few miles from where she lived. Victor stood behind her, his face ashen. "He's here." His voice was barely a whisper. A sick feeling curled in Alina's stomach. If Greaves had gone through such lengths to destroy Victor back then, what would he do if he found out they were digging into the past? Victor's hands balled into fists. I can't let him get away with it. Not anymore. But Alina grabbed his arm. You can't just walk into his office and demand justice. He's a different man now. He has power. Victor's eyes burned with fury. He took everything from me. A heavy silence stretched between them. Then Alina made a decision. We don't fight him the way he expects. We find proof. We expose him. Victor hesitated, then nodded slowly. For the first time in years, he had a purpose. The fight wasn't over yet. Alina and Victor worked together, digging into old records, newspaper clippings, anything that could prove Harlan Greaves had framed Victor all those years ago. The more they uncovered, the clearer it became. Greaves had used his wealth to erase the truth. But one name kept appearing in the documents: Elliot Turner, a former journalist who had investigated Greaves before disappearing without a trace. If anyone had answers, it was him. But tracking him down meant stepping into dangerous territory. Are you sure about this? Alina asked. Victor's jaw tightened. I've got nothing left to lose. Just as they were closing in on Turner's whereabouts, Alina received a chilling message. A plain envelope slipped under her door. Inside was a single note: stop digging, or you'll regret it. Her hands shook as she read the words. Someone knew what they were doing. It's him, Victor said, his voice dark. He knows. Alina's stomach twisted. They were playing with fire. But backing down wasn't an option, not now. They had come too far. The past was clawing its way back to the surface, and they had to see this through. No matter the cost. Alina couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching them. That night, as she walked home from work, footsteps echoed behind her. She quickened her pace, but so did the shadow trailing her. Her heart pounded. Was it just paranoia, or something more? Suddenly, a hand grabbed her wrist. She gasped, turning to face a hooded figure. Stop looking into Harlan Greaves, the voice warned, low and menacing. This is your only chance. Then, just as quickly as he appeared, the man vanished into the night. Alina stood frozen, fear tightening around her like a noose. They were in danger. Alina burst into her apartment, slamming the door behind her. Victor looked up in alarm. What happened? Her hands trembled as she recounted the encounter. His face darkened. That was a warning. But it means we're getting close. Alina shook her head. Victor, this isn't just about you anymore. Caleb is here. What if they... She couldn't finish the sentence. The thought of her son being in danger made her sick. Victor clenched his fists. We protect him, no matter what. But the truth loomed over them like a storm cloud. There was no turning back, and nowhere left to hide. The next morning, Victor tracked down Elliot Turner's last known address. The place was a rundown motel on the outskirts of town. They knocked on the door, but no one answered. Maybe he's gone, Alina whispered. But just as they turned to leave, the door creaked open. A frail man peered out, eyes darting nervously. Who are you? Victor stepped forward. We know about Harlan Greaves. And we know you do too. Turner hesitated before pulling them inside. If you're looking for justice, he murmured, you're 20 years too late. But his haunted expression said otherwise. He was hiding something. Inside the dim motel room, Turner paced anxiously. I tried to expose him once, he muttered. Thought I had enough proof. But then people started disappearing. He swallowed hard. Greaves doesn't just ruin lives. He ends them. Alina's breath caught in her throat. Victor's jaw tightened. What happened to the evidence? Turner hesitated, then pulled out an old, battered folder. Some of it's here. The rest? I buried it where no one would think to look. He met their eyes. But if you go after him, you'd better be ready. He won't let you walk away unscathed. Alina and Victor flipped through the folder, their hands shaking. Old photos, financial documents, secret dealings. But something was missing. This isn't enough to take him down, Victor murmured. Turner nodded. The real proof is locked away. He hesitated before continuing. Years ago, I found records, bank statements, offshore accounts, evidence of bribery. But before I could publish it, Greaves had me discredited. The files, they're hidden in a safety deposit box under a false name. Alina's pulse quickened. Where? Turner's eyes darkened. In the one place he never thought I'd return. A place that held more secrets than answers. Turner led them to an old bank in a forgotten part of town. The place had seen better days, but it was still operational. The box is in my alias, Daniel Hart, Turner whispered as they approached the counter. Alina's stomach twisted. If Greaves had eyes everywhere, were they walking into a trap? Turner signed the necessary papers, and a bank employee escorted them to a vault. The air inside was thick with tension. He retrieved the box and set it on the table. "This is it," he whispered. But as he lifted the lid, a single realization hit them. Someone had been here before. Turner's hands shook as he pulled out a single piece of paper. The once full box was nearly empty. "No," he breathed. "It was all here. I swear." Victor grabbed the paper. It was a note, just one sentence scrawled in red ink. "Too late." Alina's heart pounded. He knew we were coming. Turner's face went pale. "That means he's watching us right now." Suddenly, the bank's fire alarm blared. Panic erupted. "We need to go," Victor hissed, grabbing Alina's arm. They bolted toward the exit, but as they reached the doors, a black car screeched to a stop outside. They had walked straight into a trap. Victor shoved Alina and Turner behind a row of counters. "Stay low." Armed men in suits stepped out of the car, scanning the bank. "They're looking for us," Turner whispered. Alina's heart raced. They were trapped. But then she spotted something, a back exit near the vaults. "This way," she hissed. They moved quickly, slipping through the emergency exit just as the men entered the building. The alley was deserted. "Keep moving," Victor urged. They ran through the back streets, their breaths ragged. As they turned a corner, Alina's phone buzzed. A blocked number. One message: "You can't outrun me." Alina stared at the message, fear tightening her chest. "He's playing with us," she whispered. Victor took the phone, his expression grim. Not for long. They made it back to Turner's motel, locking every door and window. "We need another plan," Alina said. "That was our only chance." Turner hesitated. "Maybe not." He reached under his mattress and pulled out a small USB drive. "This is all I have left. It's not everything, but it's enough to make people ask questions." Victor took the drive. "Then we go public." But before anyone could move, the sound of car tires screeching outside sent ice through Alina's veins. They had found them. The next moments were a blur. Headlights flooded the motel room as shadows moved outside. "We need to split up," Turner said. "If we all run, they'll catch us." Alina shook her head. "No, we stay together." Victor gripped the USB drive. "We need to get this to someone who can expose it." A knock rattled the door. Then another. "You can't hide forever," a voice called. The locks wouldn't hold for long. Alina met Victor's gaze. "We finish what we started." He nodded. There was no more running. It was time to end this, once and for all. The door splintered as the first kick landed. Victor clenched his fists. "Go out the back," he whispered. Turner hesitated, but Alina grabbed his arm. "We're not dying here." They sprinted toward the rear exit, but before they could reach it, the door burst open. Two men in black suits stormed in. "End of the road," one sneered. Victor lunged first, knocking one man back, but the other pulled a gun. "Enough." Alina froze as cold metal pressed against her temple. "Give me the drive," the man demanded. Victor's mind raced. If they handed it over, everything would be lost. Alina's breath was shallow as Victor weighed their only option. "Fine," he said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out the USB drive, then hurled it across the room. The gunman flinched, distracted just long enough. Turner lunged, shoving the man's arm upward. A shot rang out, shattering a window. Victor tackled the second man as Alina dove for the drive. But before she could reach it, more footsteps thundered outside. "We have to go," she shouted. Turner grabbed a lamp and swung, knocking one attacker unconscious. Victor snatched the drive from the floor, and together, they bolted out the back. The night swallowed them whole as they ran. Sirens wailed in the distance. "We need to disappear," Turner panted. Alina scanned their surroundings. They were in the city's industrial district, warehouses looming around them. "In here," she urged, pulling Victor and Turner into an abandoned building. The air smelled of rust and oil. They crouched behind crates as black cars sped past. "We can't keep running," Victor whispered. Turner exhaled sharply. "Then we go on the offensive." He pulled out his phone. "I know a journalist, someone who hates Greaves as much as we do." Alina's pulse quickened. It was their last chance. Turner's hands trembled as he dialed. "Elliot?" a voice answered. "It's me. I have proof, real proof." A pause. Then, "Where are you?" Turner hesitated. "Somewhere safe. But we need to meet." The journalist agreed, giving them a location. 1 hour. Alina exhaled. "If we get this to the press, Greaves loses his grip." Victor wasn't convinced. "If they don't kill us first." He wasn't wrong. Greaves wouldn't go down quietly. But there was no other option. As they slipped back into the streets, one thought echoed in Alina's mind. By morning, their lives would never be the same. The cafe was quiet when they arrived. Elliot Turner sat in the corner, sipping coffee. He looked up, eyes widening at their disheveled state. "You look like hell." Victor dropped into the seat. "We don't have time for jokes." He slid the USB across the table. "This has everything." Elliot plugged it into his laptop. As he scrolled through the files, his expression darkened. "This is enough to bury him," he muttered. Then he looked up. "But it also makes you a target." Alina swallowed hard. "We already are." Elliot closed the laptop. "Then let's make sure this gets out." Elliot worked fast. "I'll release it in stages, articles, video exposés, leaks to multiple sources. That way, he can't silence it all." Alina felt a flicker of hope. "How long?" Elliot hesitated. "Tonight. But once this goes live, Greaves will know exactly who did it." Victor nodded. "Then we need to disappear." Turner exhaled. "I have a friend upstate, a safe house." Alina glanced at Caleb's photo on her phone. "We need to get him first." Elliot's fingers hovered over the keyboard. "Once I press this, there's no turning back." Victor met Alina's gaze. "Let's end this." Elliot hit publish. The response was immediate. Social media exploded. News outlets picked up the leaks. Greaves' name trended worldwide. Accusation. Investigations. A storm of exposure. Alina, Victor, and Turner sat in a rundown motel, watching it all unfold on TV. "He's cornered," Victor said. But Turner wasn't convinced. "Men like him don't go down easy." As if on cue, Alina's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." A cold dread filled her chest. "He's coming," she whispered. Victor clenched his fists. "Let him." The night was eerily silent. No cars. No footsteps. Just tension hanging thick in the air. Then, headlights flooded the motel window. "They found us," Turner whispered. Victor checked his gun. "We don't run." Alina swallowed hard. "What if Caleb?" "He's safe," Victor assured her. A car door slammed. Then another. Shadows approached the motel. A familiar voice called out. "You think you've won?" Harlan Greaves himself stood outside, flanked by his men. He smiled coldly. "Come out now, and maybe I'll make this painless." Alina's heart pounded. This was it. The final confrontation. And there was no room for fear. Greaves stepped forward, confidence radiating from him. "You're all so predictable." But then, a new sound cut through the night. Sirens. Multiple. Fast. "What?" Greaves turned, just as squad cars skidded onto the scene. Officers stormed out, weapons drawn. "Harlan Greaves," an authoritative voice called. "You're under arrest." Greaves snarled. "On what grounds?" Elliot Turner stepped out from the shadows, holding up his phone. "Everything. Wire fraud. Bribery. Conspiracy. The world knows now." Greaves' eyes burned with fury. "You think this changes anything?" But as cuffs locked around his wrists, the answer was clear. It changed everything. The morning sun rose over the city, washing everything in gold. Greaves was in custody. The evidence had spread far and wide. His empire crumbled overnight. Alina, Victor, and Turner sat on a park bench, exhausted but victorious. "We did it," Alina whispered. Turner exhaled. "For the first time in years, I can breathe." Victor squeezed Alina's hand. "What now?" She smiled softly. "We live." For the first time in a long time, there was no fear, only possibility. A simple act of kindness had led them here. And it had changed everything. What would you have done? This story reminds us that a single act of kindness can set off a chain reaction, leading to something far greater than we ever imagined. Alina's choice to help a stranger changed not just her life, but the lives of countless others. Now, we want to hear from you. What's the most unexpected result of kindness you've ever experienced? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more gripping stories that prove how small actions can lead to life-changing miracles.